Welcome to the 11th Commandment, brought to you by Spook Nation. I'm Brian Stevens here with Mr. Spook Spann. Big
Hey,
guy, it
everybody.
is June already, my man. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable.
I mean, I know you're doing some stuff on the farm and getting ready. So are we. And before we know it, it's going to be July and then, August, and people are already going to be drawing the bow and shooting at stuff in 2.5 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is the time of the year I'm keeping my food plots clipped off. I mean, we're getting so much rain and sunshine and rain and sunshine, so the clover's growing really fast, and so are the weeds and grass. So I like to keep my clover plots trimmed off right at the top of my clover and help keep all that under control. And then I'll probably spray for grass here within the next 2 weeks, and then also spray antler grow on there to just help enhance that clover even more.
Nope, absolutely. And then we're going to do a topic. We've got a gentleman who is going to join us and actually do some testimony based on some management strategies. I know people may not realize that that's a whole nother business that you do relative to managing properties and have had tremendous success. And so we thought we would bring somebody on to share some of the results and things that you've helped them accomplish. But today, let's jump into some questions. We get lots of requests for questions, and we got some awesome ones today, Spook, that are really hunt related. And we're going to talk to the Yoda himself and pick your brain and see what kind of help we can give people with some of these questions. So the first one is around barometric pressure. So we hear this talked about a lot. So what is it and how does it affect deer movement? And then is high pressure what you really want when you're thinking of barometric pressure?
Well, when I'm looking at it, I've never really correlated the barometric pressure to the hunting as much as I have when the fronts are approaching or after they've passed, which is what affects barometric pressure.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just as simple as when there's a big front coming, a lot of times that morning or that afternoon, right before it hits, say 2 or 3 hours before it hits, and I'm kind of talking about a major front, not just a weak front. And when I'm talking about the front of it, one of the best days of deer movement I've ever seen. I was young and I didn't even know what was getting ready to happen, but it was in November. And man, I saw deer everywhere. I saw 2 or 3 really big bucks that day. And I was just young. I didn't even know what was going on. Well, come to find out, I actually shot a big buck that afternoon and tracked it up until about midnight. And I was really young and I was really, really upset and disappointed. And so we were going to come back the next morning and, start back over looking for blood. And when we got up the next morning, it was pouring rain. And I mean, I don't mean just rain and steady. I mean, like
it's coming,
pouring, and it poured all day long. Well, okay, so it made sense. That's why there was so much movement right before that big front hit, because they knew what was getting ready to happen and they were going to be suppressed all the next day. But the most obvious time I've always noticed is what we've talked about so many times, and that's when after a front moves through. And there's no doubt in my mind, I don't remember exactly what happened after it quit raining. I was probably in school on that particular event, but really what I just look for now is these fronts approaching and the timing of them, and then being in the stand as soon as that front passes. And that's obviously when the barometric pressure is changing, and therefore deer enhancing or making the deer move more. But yeah, I mean, it does have an effect. It's just, just another one of those things that goes on with the weather that encourages deer, just gets them on their feet, gets them moving once that front passes.
No, and you've talked a lot about the front and the weather moving in. So if I hear what you're saying, it's less about a barometric number, exact number, if you will, but it's more about that front and anticipating deer movement and making
Yeah.
sure that you can get
I
out there
mean,
and be in the
from
woods.
my experience, it is. I mean, I know that Mark and Terry Drury talk about the barometric pressure a lot, and they're right, but it's associated with the front moving through
Yep.
most of the time. And
Got
so,
it.
with that being said, that's just what I correlate it with.
Hmm.
But it's all it goes hand in hand together.
Got it.
And there's nothing in November like having a few warm days that are kind of slow, and then you have a cold front move through that drops down out of the northwest, and temperature drops 20, 30, 40 degrees, and you get those frosty mornings with a 5 to 10 north wind. I mean, you just know it's going to be
Yep.
rocking.
Yep.
So doesn't matter what the moon is or anything else, it's going to be rocking. So that's as good as it gets. But really any time of the season. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've killed
Well, you talked about Shaq, just that slight
yeah. I mean, that was
front
first
in
week
the
of
early
September.
season.
Yeah,
Yep.
first week of September, and I mean, he was out there an hour before dark. Sun was still up after that, which that was great timing that day. It rained at noon about an inch, and that front moved through between in that
Oh yeah.
afternoon period. And so when we got in the blind, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
The front had passed, it cleared off, the sun popped out, temperature dropped about 15
I
degrees,
mean, that's just
slight
magic
north
recipe
wind,
right there.
humidity went
Yeah.
from 100% to 50%. It was awesome. I mean, you just had that feeling. You just know when it does that,
Yeah.
that's something's going to happen. So yeah, it was awesome.
Cool. Okay. All right. The next one is around moon phases. And you and I have talked a fair amount about this, and we're both believers in it, but let's get in a little more specific. So, from
Yeah.
your
So
standpoint, how does it truly affect daylight, deer movement, and the different phases of the year? And so the question is, early season, October rut, late season. So they're asking for more of the phases of the season, but I think it's also in general, I'd look at the moon phases no matter what time of year it is.
yeah, well, I've noticed. I mean, it seems to affect them. I mean, if you're on an Alp, and it's like, I like the Alp that gives like a 1 deer day up to a 6 deer day. So a 6 deer day being the one that has the best movement, and then it gives you the times when the movement should be at its top. I like that one, and then I like the moon guide. The moon guide gives you peak, major, and minor times when deer movement, when you can expect it according to where the moon's setting and what phase it's in. And then the moon guide also helps you determine, whether you should be on the edge of the field or back in the woods or closer to the bedding. Now, I don't use that part of it as much. I pretty much always know where I'm going to hunt, and so many times I'm hunting near the food, so I'm pretty much watching that moon phase. It's calling for an afternoon feed time of, anywhere from 2 to 7 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when I seem to have my best luck. And of course, a lot of times, as the full moon is approaching, when the full moon gets there, the position of that full moon is important. And a lot of people don't like to hunt the full moon, but certain days of it, I've had great success. And,
Absolutely.
pretty much when the moon is straight up or straight down
Yep.
from the earth, from your position, that's when it's the best. And it's,
Correct.
there's some scientific uh, uh, studies and things that they say enhances deer movement, fish biting, all kinds of different things. Now, Mississippi State says that they did a study that they didn't see any correlation in the moon and deer movement, which I can't really understand that, because with myself and others, a lot of other guys that I know that pay a lot of attention to it, we notice a huge correlation.
Yep.
And so I'm not sure how they, did their study or how they conducted it to come up with that. But I know there's been like random times through my life that I'll be on the farm and see a big buck in July or August standing in the food plot at 12 o'clock in the day, and it'd be
Yep.
100 degrees, and you're like, what in the world? And
Yep.
I almost every single time that happens, if you'll look, the moon is either straight up or straight down.
That's
It's
it.
just it's
No,
either
I'm
on
with
it's
you.
either on a full moon when the moon's up in
Yep.
midday, or it's on a dark moon when the moon's below. And I mean, I've seen it happen over and over and over and over again. And there's those 2 days in that harvest moon or red moon that in October are two of the best days of the season to hunt.
Yeah.
If you're on a buck and you're getting pictures of him on a food source, there's a really good chance that you're going to see him before dark on those 2 afternoons. And
Yep.
I've done it over and over and over, and I know a lot of
Sure.
other guys have too.
Yep. Okay, that's good. So the key is there. Yeah, the moon phases are important, but it's really the position of the moon and when it's straight up and straight down or straight overhead and
Yeah,
straight
yeah,
below you
yeah.
is
And
the
listen,
key thing to look at.
to me, weather trumps all.
I
If you
understand.
get a good weather, if you can have a one deer day and the moon's really not very good, and you can have a front move through, like we talked about earlier, and still have great deer movement.
Sure.
So it's not the one all cure all. It's just if you're looking for something to
Know when to be in the woods. Yep.
plan a hunt or plan a time, that's a really good time. A lot of guys don't like to plan hunts on the full moon, and I get it, but you know my experience has been just like I've got my yards planted up in clover, and I've always got food plots around my house. I've had food plots planted up to my yard for the last 25 years.
Yep.
And so I watch deer intently, and I've watched my food plots out my window in the middle of the night on full moon nights when it's so bright you can just pick your binoculars up and look out there, and a lot of times there's just not I don't see very much at night. A lot of times you might see them there again correlating if the moon gets to a certain position just right at dark, say 8, 9, 10 o'clock, you'll see them for a while, but then they don't stay out there that long, and then they bed down or leave. But that's just been my experience.
Got it.
I've watched them. I've got spot and scope and binoculars right here in the front of the house now, and
Mhm.
if I get up in the middle of the night, I just look to see what I see, and I look at my trail camera pictures, and I don't get that much activity on full moon nights.
Some people turn on the TV and watch Netflix. You go out and look at a spot and scope and
Yeah,
binoculars
yeah,
when you can't sleep in the middle of the night. That's
yeah,
not a bad. That's not a bad thing, my man.
yeah.
All right. The next one is getting into a little bit of hunting strategy from a call standpoint. So snort wheezing. Is it an inhale or an exhale? Barry Winsell describes it as an inhale. I've always thought of it as an exhale. So that's just that part. And then when to use it and when not to use it.
So you can do it either way. I've done it both ways. So it's just that's whether it's an inhale or exhale is up to the person how they learn to do it, and
Okay.
so I think I've done it both ways. So I'm sure as long as you can get close to the sound, I don't think it really matters.
Okay.
Um, when to use it. I think anytime that you grunt or rattle or snort wheeze, and if you're sitting there and you hadn't seen any deer and you decide to rattle or grunt or snort wheeze, I don't think you can go wrong. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think as long as you sound like a deer, uh, it's like people ask me that about calling turkeys. Well, how do you know when to call and not to call? Well, if you're not seeing any turkeys, if you sound like a turkey, then you're not hurting yourself by calling and
Yep.
seeing what you could get going on. But let's just say that you can see the deer.
Got
A
it.
lot of times it's just instinct. It's experience. It's reading the deer's attitude. Is he acting kind of aggressive? Is he nervous? But a lot of times, if a deer's jacked up, you've seen, maybe he was in a fight, or he heard you rattle or grunt, or he came into a call, or if he starts to leave or whatever, and you snort, wheeze, uh, that's going to be the most aggressive call, and he should react to that, especially during the rut. I know one of my favorite stories, Blake Shelton killed a really big buck, just a beautiful buck. I think it's still Blake's biggest deer. I think it was 197 typical 6x6 there in Oklahoma, right there where he lives. And he had been, I think, to the CMA Awards or something the night before, and had got in really late and started not to even go, and decided he'd get up and just go sit in a food plot there behind
Yep.
his house. And there was a doe that came in the food plot. Well, he shot it. I think he spined it, and it just fell, right there in the food plot. And he looked up, and this big buck was standing in the other end of the food plot, just standing there watching.
Oh man.
And he's like, I didn't know what to do, man. He's like, and he said, I didn't know what to do. So I just snort wheezed. And he said, when he did, said, man, he just come marching in there like a champion. And he could see the whole food plot. He could see there wasn't a buck there, but he must have thought it was standing over in the woods behind that doe, and was, and so he
Yeah.
came right in there and he shot him and killed him. And so I've had good luck with snort wheezing, especially when I can see them. Say they're passing in the woods somewhere 75, 100 yards, and you grunt maybe a couple times and get them to stop, and then snort wheeze. I've had them turn and come straight in before. I've had them. It seems like they always pay attention to it. They may not always come in, but they always pay attention. But if
Yep.
you get one that's jacked up and he's looking for a doe, and he's I think grunts and snort wheeze are good, and I don't I don't think you can do it when they get really close, because he's going to figure it out. I believe if
Yep.
he's up there really close, he's going to pinpoint where you're at or whatever. But I mean,
So that would be when not to do it, is when they're close.
exactly, yeah, I don't think that
Okay.
would necessarily be. I wouldn't do it during that
Got it.
time. If I did, it would be an extreme last resort if I felt like he had
Sure.
turned to leave.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let's talk a little bit about tracking strategy. So we got two questions on that. So one is deer wound trauma. How long before deer starts to clot up and stop bleeding? And is it possible for a deer to stop bleeding?
Well, I think it is, and most of the time, if he does, it's not a fatal shot.
Mm-hmm.
A big percentage of the time.
Yep.
I get, oh my goodness, this is one of those things I deal with a lot, and I've tracked hundreds of deer for myself and for other people, and I've had my dad was great at tracking blood. I've got some buddies who are really good at it, and we've learned so much over the years. I mean, obviously, if you know where you hit the deer, you can make a good evaluation on what you need to do as far as waiting or not waiting.
Yep.
Most of the time, we know if we made a good shot. We can tell by the blood on the air, the blood there at the spot where he was shot. We see where he was shot. A lot of times, one of the most controversial questions is, if he's gut shot, what do you do? How long do you wait? I mean, we used to wait a lot longer back when we shot a inch and a quarter or inch fixed blade, but then after started shooting, two and a quarter, 2.5 inch expandables like a swacker, it didn't take them near as long to
Correct.
die. We used to leave them overnight almost every time, and we'd just find them the next morning. A lot of times here at home, we'd find them in the nearest water, which most
And
of the
that's the
time
same
was
here, down here.
Yeah.
gut shot down here.
Yeah.
We're going to go find the nearest water.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been some times in the more recent years shooting swacker where I I might give them 4 or 5 hours and then just pick up the blood trail. I like to do it by myself just so I can be for a little ways, just so I can be quiet and analyze what kind of blood I'm finding. And then most of the time, if I've waited 4 or 5 hours, I find the deer dead already.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing wrong with waiting until the next morning. The biggest problem with that is just there's a good chance nowadays, most everywhere, everybody hunts, coyotes are going to be on it
Yep.
when you find it the next morning. And that's the hardest part. I mean, what you would like to do is maybe if you shot one in the afternoon, maybe give it, according to what kind of broadhead you're shooting, give it 6 hours and then take up the trail and see how you feel about it. And if you jump the deer, you got to back out, obviously.
100%. Yep.
But like I said, there's nothing wrong with waiting. It's just risky on whether the coyotes are going to find him before you do, and if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Nope, for sure. All right. So this ties in a little bit with that, Spook, and that is, what is your strategy for tracking deer in the rain? Or if all right, what is your strategy for tracking deer if rain or snow are coming in? So you've shot the deer. You'd normally like to give them the 6 hours you're talking about, but you got a front or a weather system moving in the next hour to two.
So I don't think that changes anything,
Okay.
because if you push the deer, the just because of the weather, there's a good likelihood that you're just going to push it further away, and it's going to be even harder to find. I think if there's a weather coming, and I think it's you wait as long as you can, and then you either try to track it or just give it the night. And go back the next morning, because more than likely, if it's a killing shot and you don't put any pressure on him, he won't go that far,
Yep.
And so if it rains or snows, obviously if it snows, and I don't have to deal with that very often, being the places I hunt, I've never had an issue where I've had to worry about the snow too many, maybe just once or twice. I could see where if it was going to snow and cover the deer up, it might be a little challenging. But I just feel like especially if I got a couple people that can help me and I don't put any pressure on him, I feel like we can find him pretty easy there within not too far from where you shoot him the next morning. If he's going to die, assuming that he dies, that he's dead, he's not going to go, he won't go that far, and I think you'll have a better chance. I think if you push him and you just keep pushing because you say it's going to rain and then it starts raining, then I think you're in trouble.
Well, absolutely. And there's a follow-up question in here, and I think you've already answered it, is, do you push the deer to make them bleed out, or do you wait and risk tracking the deer after blood gets covered
The
up
only
and
the
washed
only
away? And I
time
think,
when I've noticed that working, and I have done that, is the arrow's still in it, and you jump it, and you see there's a lot of blood. So it's hard, admittingly. I pushed a deer. I shot a really big buck 3 years ago, and I was finding good blood. So I just kept pushing. I couldn't figure out what had happened. Actually, I had shot the deer a little bit high, but it still caught him and he still bled out. But I pushed that deer hard. He went a long ways. Now, we weren't expecting any rain or anything, and we didn't get any. And I ended up having to shoot him again, but I pushed him hard enough where I probably pushed him at least a mile, or if not further. It seemed like it was 3 miles, but it probably wasn't when you're in the dark and tracking. But it finally I ended up, finding him. And so it's just, it's a tough call. I mean, but if there, if he's bleeding good, I don't see you could try it. But
Yeah, I mean, I've had mixed results. I think for the most part, given the deer time, and then even if the next day you got to get a few buddies and you got to grit it if you don't. And I found deer that way. My
yeah,
son shot a deer 2 years ago in Georgia, and we went in, and he wasn't dead that night, and we backed out. And if we'd have pushed him, honestly, I don't know where he would have ended up. It was a suburban buck, and it
yeah,
could
oh
have
yeah,
ended up. And we went back the next day, and he ended up where I absolutely didn't think, and we just had to grit it and find him. There was no blood, and
yeah,
so I
yeah.
just
And I mean, and that has a lot to do with your decision making. Also, is what are your situations on adjoining property owners?
right.
How big's the property you're on? That kind of thing. And so, if there's a chance that he's going to go off on a neighbor, and that neighbor is not cooperative about tracking or recovering a deer on his property, then the best thing you can do is just wait.
Yep.
I don't think I don't think I think it's hard to go wrong with waiting most of the time.
Correct.
Um, but as you get more experienced and you get a good feeling for where you hit the deer, then the better you'll get at knowing what you should do, because so much of it's based on what you saw and how you feel about it,
Hmm.
when you shot. But what gets everybody so many times is either a shoulder shot or that high shot that's in the void, or just below the backbone, or maybe it does get down in the vital, or it's a one lunger. And so, shoulder shots and those high void shots, most times not going to kill him anyways.
Yep.
And you say, well, we found blood really good for 200 or 300 yards and then we lost it. Well, that's what happens when you
Yep.
shoot a deer in those places. And so, you didn't have anything to lose by waiting, if, either way. And of course, a lot of people, where you can, I mean, a lot of people using drone recovery, which is incredible. A lot of people are using dogs to recover, which is incredible. And I mean, I wished it was legal everywhere, because it seems like it's the ethical thing to do, and to do everything you can to help yourself recover the deer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to get on my soapbox on that because
I
I
know.
agree with you. And look, I grew up around dogs. We use dogs to track deer,
Yeah.
and it can be so good. But I also know you can blow the entire woods out. And the drone to me is a no brainer.
Oh, for
And
sure.
how these states don't allow somebody to use that technology to pinpoint that deer is the ethical thing to do. And then you can go into that exact spot, find that animal, recover them, and do the right thing. And these guys have gotten really good at it,
Yeah.
and the technology, and it just drives me batty that it's not
Absolutely.
legal everywhere.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, all right, all day sits. What are some of the best practices for staying in the stand all day during the rut?
Um, Good food and cell coverage.
Okay. And a pee bottle
And a pee bottle and a shovel under the
and a
tree.
shovel. Uh-huh. You dang right.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, well, all right.
No.
Good food, jokingly, but you and I are weird about our food.
Well,
Good
yeah. I
food is
mean,
nutritious food that's going to give you good energy, actually.
yeah,
Not,
that, and just, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we get bored, we want a snack. So, I mean, that's why I'm fortunate. Marty makes these homemade protein uh, cookies that are
oh, I've
just
had them. They're
amazing.
pretty dang
Yeah.
amazing.
And so that's my go-to.
Yeah.
And I usually, if I'm planning an all day sit, I mean, I usually carry two sandwiches with me. I make up a couple sandwiches, and have me a couple bottles of water. But and then I try to be strategic on my all day sits, as far as, is it in the rut? Is it full moon? Am I anticipating that midday movement? I mean, you're liable to kill a deer in the rut any time of day. We all know that. The more you're out there, the better it's going to be. I think if you get those just awesome days, especially after front moves through, and you're in that November time period, especially in between the 7th and the end of the month, it's just uh, there's anything can happen. So
Sure.
those all day sits are awesome. I love to do it, um, especially. I mean, obviously nowadays that we have, the redneck blinds and enclosed blinds. If we have those in places where we can, they make it way easier to do all day sits, and then just a lot of comfortable blinds, stands. Make it easier to do. It used to be really, really tough when you had those old stands that we had back years ago, the old Baker stands and different things like
Yep.
that made it really hard. But now they make stands, comfortable enough that you can do it easier. But I think during the rut, it's it's always a good practice to do it. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of being mentally prepared and ready with, like I said, some good food, something to drink, a pee bottle, and just so that you're prepared to hang in
Yep.
there. I think it's awesome.
Yep. Nope. And look, I've dorked out too and brought a book, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
sometimes it just like you said, it's whether it's your phone, a book,
yeah,
to keep your mind preoccupied, not fidget and move and all of that stuff.
yeah.
So
Well,
that's all
I
great
know
advice.
that we have a good time. I mean, they're. I use that time to do business, to message friends, or message a lot of my contacts, see what's going on, see if they've seen anything, what's showing up on the camera, what they're seeing as far as the movement all over the country, and just use that
Hmm.
time as part of my networking too. So,
Yep.
yeah, I enjoy it.
Yep. Well, Billy and I found that when we were filming and filming each other and hunting, it was bad news because we'd get the giggles and we'd start laughing,
Well, it's one of the
and
best
we
things.
we would
So that's a whole nother topic for people who film. And when we were filming, it was awesome because you got somebody to talk to.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And
You got another set of
another
eyes
thing
and
that would
somebody to talk
happen
to.
too, I would tell, I mean, sometimes you can get run down and you get a little sleepy, or, and I would tell JD, I was like, man, I gotta close my eyes for about 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
I would just lay my head back or do something just to rest my eyes and let them pay attention and watch. But yeah, it can happen. I remember to this day, I was laying down in a big blind over in Illinois on the Mississippi River, and my cameraman and my son Coleman were in there, and we were on a muzzleloader hunt. And my I had just woke up. I had laid down. I was wore out, been driving a lot, and I had been asleep about 30 or 45 minutes, and I just opened my eyes, but I hadn't gotten up yet. I'm so mad at myself that I wasn't up, but of course there wasn't no way to know. And my cameraman just goes crazy. And there's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, 8-pointer I've ever seen walked out in the brassicas and straight up and down. It's between 12 and 12:30,
Mm.
and he got so excited, and then I got excited, and I hated this blind. It's the worst deer blind I've ever hunted out of, and I will never have another one. But it was one of those Texas blinds that had the windows, and you had to push in the things on the side and raise it up. I mean, that's the dumbest deer blind design I've ever seen in my life. And had I known they were like that, I would have never ordered that blind. I
Yep.
didn't think
Yep.
about anybody putting in a window like that to,
It hasn't
and
clicked.
and so just in the excitement of all that, we made too much noise, and he ended up going back in the bush, in the trees. That farm was real unusual because it was NWRP, and we had planted brassica plots and clover and oats and strips, but the outskirts of it were all just a lot of almost looked like brush and trees that you would see in Saskatchewan or something.
Wow.
And because anytime the river would get way up, a lot of times, which didn't happen that often, but say it happened every 10 or 15 years, it would mess up so much stuff. It was just continuous regrowth. So it was always really thick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I still to this day have nightmares about letting that deer get away. I was sick because he was a giant.
Especially an 8-point.
Well, I think that deer was a legitimate close to 188 pointer. That's how big he was. I mean, this deer was a superstar on any level. I mean, just a slob. I mean, he was an 8-pointer on a 200-inch frame.
Wow.
If he'd have been a 10-pointer, it would have been easily in the 90s, if not 200, easily. Yeah. I mean, it's just a massive, wide, long tines. I mean, I wish I hadn't even thought of it.
All right. Well, let's move on so you get that out of your head a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. How much wind does it take to overcome thermals? And is that possible?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, it's possible. And that's a great question that I've never really, I mean, most of the time that I've noticed thermals is when it's just dead still.
Okay.
So I don't think it takes very much. I mean, I would think if you've got a pretty steady 5-mile-an-hour wind, I think it would overcome it for the most part. Like I said, the only times when I've ever really noticed thermals or thought that they were a problem is just when it's basically dead still. I mean, like zero wind. And then,
so I'm going to follow up with that. This goes into what you're saying. Is it, for example, if you're hunting in an afternoon, thermals are sinking the last 30 minutes of daylight. Is a 2-mile-per-hour wind sufficient enough to keep the thermals out of the bottom, or does it need to be, a 3 or 5 mile an hour plus?
Man, that's a good question. That's tough. There again, I mean, most of the time when I've never seen a steady 2-mile-an-hour wind. So most of the time it's light and variable, or it's, which is a problem, is always a problem, or it's, 5 to 10 or something like that. I think anytime it's under 5 miles an hour, there's going to be times when it's not blowing at all, and times maybe just when it's blowing just, 3 to 5. So my thoughts are that if the wind is blowing, it should control the thermal.
Okay.
I might get some pushback on that from somebody, but there's very, very, very few days that I ever hunt that there's not some wind of some kind.
Correct.
Those days when it's dead still, the thermals, can get you, obviously. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of it's got to do with you hunting flat land, hills and hollows. I mean, hills and hollows, it don't matter if it's thermals or the wind's blowing, it's going to swirl and do everything in the world. Yep. So it's the wind's always difficult if you're hunting on the side of the hill or down in the hollow. Now, you get up on the ridge, up on top, it's not so bad.
Okay.
And but then when you hunt bottoms and things like that, obviously, when you hunt in flatter country, if you've got wind, usually that's nice and you can count on it and it's steady. Mm-hmm. And then if it's dead still, the thermals, I mean, I haven't noticed the thermals being that big a deal when in flat country when there's no wind. But there again, that's why I use Ozonics every time. I mean, there's rarely ever a time when I hunt now that I don't use Ozonics, and it works the best when there's no wind. So it helps control any issue you might have with thermals.
Well, and I think that's great advice. And that's the other part is,
that's part of the purpose of it. So I mean,
exactly. And things change. You can have a great plan. You can look on an app, see weather, see wind, but things can change that don't line up with what you had anticipated. And that's why I do love the Ozonics, is that it allows you to adjust and not blow
Oh,
your
yeah.
complete
If I've had a
setup.
$5 bill for every time I've looked at the weather and it said the wind was going to be out of the west northwest, and I get up in the stand and it's out of the east southeast, I'm like, what in the world? It couldn't
Yep,
be any more opposite. But
exactly.
so it happens all the time, especially like I said, in places where you hunt where there's hills, like here in
Hmm.
Tennessee and Georgia and some different places like that.
Yep. Okay. One more on thermals. Are
Yep.
thermals affected by direct sunlight, or is it strictly on temperature changes? Here's the for example. On a cloudy day, does it take longer for thermals to start rising than it does on a clear sunny day? And does moisture, fog, rain have any effect on the thermals?
So I think definitely that rain has an effect on thermals, and I love hunting on rainy days because I
Hmm.
feel like that I can get away with scent control better. Um, that's a good question. I mean, when I notice the thermals changing always is when the sun goes down, obviously. And that's obviously when you notice the biggest change. To say that is it different on the cloud? I mean, most of the time when you've got my experience has been most of the time when I'm hunting on cloudy days, most of the time that's some type of weather in the area. So there's some wind involved. So the thermals don't really come into play that much when it's cloudy. Very seldom do I ever experience super still days where I would experience the thermals on a cloudy day. Most of the time it's on clear days when
Yeah.
the sun goes down, and that's when the thermals switch. So I notice it more on the sunny days, but I do like rainy days. Fog seems like fog, is one of those deals. I mean, fog is sitting there because usually there is no wind, so it's everything's just kind of still. And then the I don't think it's anything that I've ever paid that much attention to. There again, I put so much faith in my Ozonics that and I'm always making sure my clothes are clean and I got my mock scrapes and my um, fresh doe urine or buck urine out and all my little tricks in place that I don't pay that much attention to. I don't worry about it that much
Yep. Okay.
myself. Yeah.
All right. So last question, and this is a loaded question, Spook. We've just talked about it, but
That's
is
what my
Ozonics
wife does it to me all the time. I'm used
I
to it.
know. I know. I've seen it
Do
happen.
I look good, babe? Does my
Yeah.
hair look okay? Do you
Uh-huh.
like what I'm wearing?
Yep.
That's
All
loaded as it
that.
gets.
It's as loaded as it gets, buddy, and you better answer right.
That's
Hmm.
right.
All right. Is Ozonics legit? All right. Does it actually work? Talk about the science behind how this helps disguise human scent and how, which I think this is the key is I know what your answer is going to be. Yes, it works and you think it's legit, but how do you use it properly?
Yeah. So there's a lot to it. Um, and probably the first year I used Ozonics, I wasn't having very good luck. And it's easy to give up on something when something's not working. But if I have a guy that tells me it's working for him and it's not working for me, and I believe him, then I'm probably doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to admit that. And I want to learn what the deal is because this is important when it comes to
Yep.
hunting. Now, I'm a firm believer. I've known about Ozonics from almost its inception. I was friends with the guy who kind of came out with it, Dennis from Texas. We grew up in the same church, not the exact same location, but we both grew up in Church of
Right.
Christ. So we kind of had a kindred spirit, and we really liked each other and enjoyed talking to each other. So I had lots of good feedback from him on how to do things, and um, it does work. It works the best for me when I'm in a ground blind or a redneck or an enclosed situation where I can just open one or two windows and then have that ozonics blowing out in front of me and has like a curtain that comes down. And ozonics kills bacteria. Odor is caused by bacteria, and ozonics kills bacteria. And I actually had a home purification air purifier in my house 30 years ago. I didn't know what it was, but it was ozonics because it
Mm-hmm.
smelled the exact same. I didn't know
Right.
back then, or it may have been longer than that, 35 years ago. And the technology's been around for a long time. They use it to clean up. They use it in hospitals. They use it in crime scenes where they find somebody in a hotel or something or a house or whatever. They
Yep.
use it, and they've got different levels. Now, I'm going to tell you how the level that I took it to. So we had when we grew hemp, when the hemp phase kind of came in and we grew hemp, and I was trying to use the kill dryers from the sawmill to dry the hemp, but there was a from drying hardwood lumber in those kilns for years, they had a little bit of an odor to them. So I brought in these big commercial uh, ozonic machines and ran them for 24 hours. And when we opened that door, we turned them off. You can't go in there if they've been on for 24 hours. We turned them off, waited about 8 hours, opened the doors, and you couldn't smell nothing. And I
Okay.
mean, it works. Now, if you're in a tree and the wind's blowing 20, 25,
Yep.
I think that's a toss up. I think it's tough.
Yep.
When I'm up there, I turn it straight down where if I'm in a tree, I'm coming straight down, and I've usually got two or three of them, and try to maximize the output. But that's challenge. I think if it's
Mm-hmm.
5 to 15 and you've got two in the tree, I think you can get away with it. If it's under 10 and you've got it set up right, it works great. I've had it work over and over, and knock on wood, I've never had it fail me if I was in a ground blind or a redneck. And in a redneck, I take super glue and glue Velcro up in the top, and I glue Velcro to the ozonics and just stick it up there.
Yep.
So I love it. I believe in it. They should be sponsoring me. That y'all need to call me. There's nobody that's killed more big bucks or bigger bucks with ozonics than I have. I promise you. So
I know that's true. Well, look, you turned us onto it years ago, and so we started using it and having success. And I think the thing for me where I really saw it was when we were in Alberta,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
were in a tree, and we had one morning we had just one ozonics going. Had myself and the cameraman. Does were about 40, 50 yards in front of us, no problem. And then you could just feel the wind and you knew it was going to happen. And then stop on a dime,
yeah,
blew out. Next day, we put a second one in there and we had two of them blowing in same wind, same scenario spook that next morning. And they literally walked right in front of us and no issues. So that to me was one. What I also started to do with them before they started with the containers that you could put your clothes in with
right.
the machine.
Mm-hmm.
I would take a wet like a dry bag, and I would take my hunting clothes. I'd wash them, but I would, and like let's say you're out on the mountain and you can't wash them. I would take and put my Ozonics with
Yeah,
extra batteries in that
yeah,
bag to clean my clothes if I was on a mountain hunt for 2-3 days. And I'm telling you,
yeah.
it worked.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at between 2 and 3,000 inches of bone that was directly related to using ozonics.
Yep.
I ain't got
Yep.
nothing else to say.
I hear you, brother. I hear you. Yep. Well, look, I mean, I think it's a great question.
Yeah,
And I think people see a lot of stuff advertised, and there are those products that this is legitimate.
yeah,
It's like the Swacker, the Ozonics. There
yeah.
are things that you just, no matter if you got paid to
It's
do it or not, you're
probably
going to
the
use them.
number one question I get.
Yeah.
It's probably
And it
because
does
because
work.
guys don't really want to go out and spend $300 or $400, and I get it. It's not like buying a bottle of deer urine or a pack of broadheads or whatever.
Yep.
They just don't want to
It's an
go out and
investment.
spend that kind of money unless they know. So and it's you there's you will learn ways to better utilize it, and you still need to keep your clothes clean, your body clean, and still, but it's the most helpful thing that I've found. I love it. And when I'm using it I've put it to the ultimate test over and over and over, and have 10, 15, 20, 25 deer eating in front of me in a ground blind downwind, and nothing. They never know you're there. I just
Yep.
don't think you can get away with that many times in any other way.
No, you can't. And here's the other thing. You talk about it's expensive, and yes, it is. I've got two Ozonics, and I've got literally one of the first generation ones that when we started using
Mm-hmm.
them,
Yep.
the old big box square one
Yeah.
that's probably 8 years old, Spook. And I have another one that's at least 5 or 6 years old, and they still work great.
Oh yeah. I've still got some I've got several over 10 years old
Yeah.
I've used,
Yeah. So
So
it's worth the investment for long term too.
I
It's
agree.
not
I
a
agree. Yep.
one time, you're gonna last, and so I think we both agree the results speak for themselves. So
One of the things
well,
that I was
yep,
doing wrong in the beginning is I had it blowing kind of straight out, and you need to tilt it down some so that it's coming down in front of you, that curtain of Ozonics. It's really important. And the
that's right.
harder the wind blows, the steeper the angle. You need to have it coming down right off the bill of your cap, right down
Got it.
in front of you. If it's sticking straight out and blowing out further, and the wind's blowing, it's not going to be as. That's just one quick tilt.
No, that's a great tip.
The gluing it in the top of a enclosed blind is great. Some people question about breathing Ozonics. That's why I don't have it with the windows closed. I always have the window open. And then a lot of times I'll wear it's really easy when it's cold. I'll wear a face mask over it and just breathe through the face mask. And there's another little camo mask that I like to wear to help with that. Most of the time it's not a problem, but that I have the windows open, and so it's not a problem. But
Yep.
if you're worried about it, or if it's bothering you or making your throat a little scratchy, you just wear you could wear a surgeon, just one of those little masks like the dentist uses or something. Just
Yep.
pull up. There's
Okay.
lots of them out now since COVID, so you can
Yep.
just find something like that, and it'll help filter that.
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll find one in camo too.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Spook, great Q&A today, and as always appreciate your advice and perspective and real world experience with these things, and we definitely are going to do more of this and dig into deeper questions and things as we get into early season, the rut and all that. So thank you again,
Hey,
and
is
everybody.
my pleasure as always. I love this stuff, and I love talking about it, and I just feel blessed that we got this going on, and excited about things to come in the future.
That's it, buddy. And the whole idea is to help people be more
Abs-
productive, have better
Absolutely.
results, use your experience and results, and just share the knowledge. And
And continue to send us questions, and don't
yeah,
take any. I mean, there's no question that you can ask that's going to seem silly to us. I mean, I take some things for granted, admittedly, just because you know, been doing it so long, but don't be embarrassed. I mean, ask any question about, we'll be glad to answer it and help you out any way we can.
for sure. For sure. All right, my man.
All right.
God
Thanks,
bless
brother.
and have a great rest of the
You
day. And
too.
everybody, thank you again.
Thanks.